We are going to spend a few minutes talking about UOVC grant conditions. These apply to all federal grant types, including VOCA, VAWA, and SASP. Again, grant conditions are the state, local, and UOVC specific conditions. The first condition is obligation of grant funds. Grant funds may only be expended or obligated during the grant period. Only allowable costs incurred during the grant period will be eligible for reimbursement. 2 is utilization, payment, and limitations of funds. Grant funds may only be expended for purposes and activities that are covered by the approved project activities and budget. A grant amendment is required to make changes to the approved project activities or budget, and a deobligation form must be completed and returned for any funds that need to be deobligated. Payment will be adjusted to correct any previous overpayments Payment will be adjusted to correct any previous overpayments and any disallowances resulting from an audit. Third is budget management. Funds awarded for supplies and equipment need to be planned and utilized early in the grant period to ensure the full benefit of the purchase is received. Moving funds during the last month of the grant cannot be done merely to use available funds. Any supplies or equipment purchased should be done for needs during the current grant period. Fourth is requirements related to the de minimis indirect cost rates. So if a subrecipient elects to use the de minimis indirect cost rate, they need to notify UOVC in writing of both its eligibility and its election. The de minimis rate can only be applied to the modified total direct cost. 5 is compensation and method of payment. Subrecipients may be reimbursed for federal share of approved program expenses on a monthly or quarterly basis, and funding is reimbursement based only. Condition 6 is non-supplantation. So grant funds may only be used to supplement non-federal funds that would otherwise be available, but it may not use them to supplant those federal funds. And 7 is personal property. Any non-expendable personal property acquired with grant funds must be retained in the grant program as long as there is a need for that property to accommodate the purpose of the program. Even if the program is no longer supported by grant funds, that equipment needs to be maintained in the program. When the property is no longer needed, the subrecipient shall request a disposition instruction from the UOVC. Condition 6 is unallowable expenses. Some costs or activities are not allowable expenses. These include items that are not part of the approved budget, purchase of real property, construction projects, indirect or overhead costs which have not been approved by the federal government, lobbying, fundraising, physical modifications to buildings, research programs, and also food other than that used to support the emergency needs of victims is not allowable. 9 is about misuse of award funds. So this condition says that all subrecipients are agreeing that misusing award funds can lead to serious consequences like losing the current and future funds, being banned from federal grants, and having to pay back the money, and also they could face legal penalties. Condition 10 is on termination or suspension. So if the director of UOVC finds that the subrecipient hasn't followed the rules, hasn't made progress as promised, or has made changes that wouldn't have been originally approved in the grant application, then they can pause or end the award until things have been fixed. Condition 11 is providing grant-funded services at no charge. All services that are provided through the approved grant program must be provided to victims at no charge. 12 is financial audits. So any subrecipient who expends more than $750,000 in federal funds in a year must obtain an independent single audit and submit that audit to the UOVC within 1 month of its completion. Condition 13 is nonprofit tax exempt status. Nonprofit subrecipients must make their financial statements available online, or they need to have a federal 501c3 status. But if it's a 501c3 status, they also must file an IRS Form 990 or similar tax document. 14 is third-party participation. Any agreement or contract that is entered into with third parties must be approved in advance by the UOVC in writing. All contracted fees must be completed under a current valid contract that is provided to the UOVC within 3 days from the date it is fully executed. If the agreement is terminated, UOVC must be notified in writing no later than 3 business days from the date of termination. Services must be specifically identified in the written agreement to be eligible for reimbursement and must be provided within the grant period. The award recipient still maintains control and responsibility for the grant program, even if some of the work is completed by a third-party contractor. Contractors are bound by all grant conditions. 15 is purchasing. This just says that the subrecipient agrees to follow its own rules for buying things, including travel, getting supplies and equipment, and making contracts. So internal policies need to be followed. Condition 16 is the travel policy. So all subrecipients can use their own travel rates as long as they're not higher than the federal rates set by the GSA. UOVC maintains the right to check to see if the rates are reasonable. Rates must be the same for all funding sources and both grant and non-grant funded personnel. If there's no established policy, then the agency must follow Utah's travel policy, and air and rail rates, travel rates always need to be at the coach rates. 17 is funding for computer networks. This says that the subrecipient is agreeing that award funds can't be used for computer networks unless they are blocking pornography on those networks. This doesn't stop funds being used for law enforcement criminal investigation activities. So information systems is 18. This is regarding criminal justice information system programs. Says that the subrecipient agrees to follow the rules in 28 CFR Part 20 to protect people's privacy and ensure data accuracy. And then 19 is financial management systems. Subrecipient is agreeing to set up and keep good accounting systems and financial records, accurately tracking all awarded funds. They need a system that records records and reports the money coming in, going out, and what it's spent on. They must also keep proper records for paid staff and volunteers, and more details on this can be found in the DOJ financial guide. So condition 20 is for access to grant records, and this is saying that subrecipients must let UOVC and DOJ, among other organizations, check the records related to the grant. They need to provide financial program documents when asked, showing how they spent the money and their progress. They also agree to cooperate if they're monitored on site, possibly with short notice. Condition 21 is on auditing, monitoring, and evaluation. Agencies have to keep good financial control and management, including audits and evaluations, to ensure funds are used properly. They must keep records and submit reports as required by the UOVC. If UOVC sees any problems with their past funding or reports, they might be labeled high risk, which could mean that they would receive extra monitoring or restrictions on accessing funds until they fix the issues. 22 talks about compliance with request for proposal solicitation requirements. So this is saying that all agencies, all subrecipients need to follow all of the rules that are listed in the RFP under which they applied for the grant, and the RFP is part of the grant agreement. 23 talks about the grant primary point of contact. There must always be someone appointed as the primary point of contact for the grant. This person is responsible for running the program, and the subrecipient needs to keep their contact information updated in the Utah Grants Management System. 24 is the grants management training. This says that the point of contact and financial point of contact for the grant program must attend the UOVC grant management training or watch the training recordings. If there's a new point of contact or financial point of contact during the grant period, they also must watch the recorded trainings within 60 days of starting in that role. Condition 25 is about grant amendments. This says that subrecipients need UOVC approval for any big changes to the grant program, like altering goals, personnel, or the budget, and they should also submit proposed changes through the grants management system. Condition 26 is on the quarterly financial reimbursement reports. This explains that subrecipients must send quarterly financial reports to UOVC through the GMS by the 30th of the month after each quarter ends. The final report is due within 15 days after the grant period ends, so that's for the quarter 4. They can also choose to submit monthly reports by the last day of the month. Performance progress reports is 27, and the subrecipient must send quarterly reports detailing progress toward goals and objectives. The reports need submitted regardless of whether grant funds were spent during that reporting period. And keep in mind that late reports could result in corrective action. For VAWA and SASP grants only, subrecipients must also submit an annual report at the end of each calendar year. The annual report form and more information on the federal reporting are available on the Muskie website, and the link to that is provided in the grant conditions document. Condition 28 is about the report to the governing entity. Subrecipients need to give 2 reports each year to their local, state, or nonprofit governing body. These reports should be presented live, whether online or in person. The reports need to cover crime categories, services provided to victims, and program achievements. And grant-funded staff must be involved in these presentations. Condition 29 is on civil rights training requirements. Subrecipients must do a civil rights training every year by watching the online training provided on the CCJJ website. The training needs to be done in the first quarter of each grant year. And then condition 30 is on equal employment opportunity plan, so EEOP. As a subrecipient of GOJ funding, agencies are agreeing to follow the equal employment opportunity plan rules. All subrecipients need to fill out a certification form stating their EEOP status. And unless exempt, you need to create an EEOP plan and submit it through the OCR's EEO reporter tool. All right, here's the last few. So 31 is access to services referencing limited English proficiency. Subrecipients must make sure that people with limited English proficiency can fully access the services offered by the grant program. Discrimination based on national origin includes discrimination against LEP individuals. Recipients must take reasonable measures to ensure that LEP individuals can use their programs effectively. This might involve providing language assistance services like translation when needed. The U.S. Department of Justice offers guidance to help grantees meet these rules, and they are accessible online at lep.gov. Condition 32 is on crime victims' rights. So some recipients need to follow state and federal laws that protect victims of crime. They agree in this condition that to provide all necessary rights and services required by law, including informing victims of their rights and remedies if those rights are violated. The subrecipients will train their employees and volunteers on these rights and laws and promise to comply with all victim rights laws. Condition 33 is conflict of interest. So all subrecipients need to inform UOVC in writing about any potential conflicts of interest which arise when someone involved in the grant program has personal or business interests that could interfere with their duties. They need to disclose these conflicts to UOVC within 24 hours of discovery. Condition 34 is on subrecipient program income. UOVC has the authority to approve program income defined as money directly made from grant activities during the grant period. They typically cannot be generated by subrecipients without UOVC's approval. If a subrecipient wants to add program income, they must get UOVC's written approval first. Any program income that is added must be supported or must support the approved budget activities and follow award conditions. Without UOVC's approval, program income must be subtracted from the subrecipient's total costs. And then finally, condition 30 is on copyrighted works. This is reference to 2 CFR 200-315B. Says that the subrecipient can copyright any work developed under this award. However, UOVC and OVW or OVC have the right to use the work for federal purposes without royalty. Before purchasing ownership or using copyrighted work with award funds, subrecipients need written approval from UOVC and also must ensure that this condition is included in any contracts related to the award. That is all of the grant conditions. And now Mariah is going to address this last section on forms for certification.
Okay, there are a few forms that will be required to be completed as part of the certified assurances and grant conditions, and we'll go through each of them briefly. The first we have is the certification regarding lobbying. This form is federally required for all organizations, and it must be signed by your authorized official. There is an additional form that will be required for agencies who receive over $100,000 in combined federal funding and use any funds other than those federal funds to lobby. The vow of confidentiality acknowledgement form is also federally required, and the UOVC requires that all subrecipients of federal funding adhere to the vow of confidentiality provision, which must be signed again by your authorized official. The third form, the Rape Crisis Counselor mandate for the state of Utah, is applicable to nonprofit organizations providing rape crisis services. It requires compliance with the confidential communication for sexual assault act and that staff receive 40 hours of training. The privileged communication with victim advocates mandate is required for all nonprofit and government organizations who provide direct services to crime victims. This form certifies compliance with the Privileged Communications with Victim Advocates Act. And then on the signing page, that must be completed and signed by your authorized official. To certify completion of this training, the primary point of contact and the financial point of contact are required to complete this FY25 Federal Grants Award Conditions Training webinar and fill out the link. It is provided here in this slide, and it's also on the UOVC website. Grant-funded personnel are encouraged to complete the training. And then last, here are a few helpful links and resources. Of course, we have the Utah Office for Victims of Crime. Under the Grants tab, you will find all the information and resources regards to all of the federal grants. The companion guide we mentioned earlier on in the certified assurance trainings, that goes over some definitions and some abbreviations for some of the language used in the certified assurances and grant conditions. We also have the UOVC YouTube channel, which does house it'll house this recording, training recording, and also others. And then last, the Vocapedia is a good resource for those that have VOCA grants. We appreciate your time, and if you have further questions or want clarification in regards to any of these certified assurances, grant conditions, or special conditions, we encourage you to reach out to your grant analyst. Thank you for your time.